Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping right into the wild evolution of food safety today. We're going to trace how we went from the government strictly forbidding microscopic, highly specific chemicals all the way to the broad, everyday, ultra-processed foods that are probably sitting in your pantry right this second.
Let's kick things off with a surprisingly weird question. What exactly does the government legally forbid you from eating? You know, when you walk into a grocery store, you just kind of assume everything on the shelf is safe. But there is actually a massive, highly detailed legal framework operating behind the scenes dictating exactly what can and cannot go into your cart.
Section 1. The Banned Ingredients List. Exploring 21 CFR Part 189. To protect public health, the FDA's legal code gets incredibly and honestly kinda gruesomely specific. For instance, the law explicitly defines and bans what it calls prohibited cattle materials to stop the spread of disease. This forces regulators to focus on really specific microscopic details. They have to explicitly ban things like brains, skulls, spinal cords, and the small intestines of older cattle. It even goes so far as to outlaw material from non-ambulatory disabled cattle, which basically means cows that can't walk because of severed tendons or nerve paralysis. It's a highly targeted anatomical ban.
Section 2. Bizarre but true bans. The micromanagement of food safety.
Historically, the FDA has basically played a giant game of regulatory whack-a-mole. They've targeted these hyper-focused bans on specific individual chemical additives that actually used to be pretty common. They went after specific plant derivatives like calamus and coumarin, but also synthetic sweeteners. Take P4000, for example. This was an artificial sweetener that was an absurd 4,000 times sweeter than regular sugar. It was meticulously identified as a health risk and entirely outlawed.
And what's wild is that these micro-regulations didn't even stop at the food itself. They extended right to the packaging. The FDA had to step in and outlaw toxic components that could literally leach into your meal. We're talking about bans on things like Flectol H and food packaging adhesives, lead solders used to build metal food cans, and even those fancy tin-coated lead foil wrappers that used to go over the corks on wine bottles.
But right here is the major pivot of our explainer today. See, we successfully banned those specific microscopic toxins. We won the war against P4000 and lead wine foils. But at the exact same time, we've allowed a massive systemic threat to completely take over our diets. I'm talking about ultra-processed foods. We successfully managed the micro-threats, sure, but we've allowed a broad, heavily marketed macro-threat to just completely fill our supermarket shelves.
Section 3. The Ultra-Processed Problem. The Legal Threat in Our Modern Diet.
So ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, these are industrial formulations packed with chemical additives to enhance taste and shelf life, usually with almost zero whole foods. And they are everywhere. To truly grasp the scale of this modern threat, an umbrella review in the BMJ analyzed epidemiological data from an overwhelming 9,888,373 participants. Just think about that number. That isn't a small sample size. This is massive, population-level evidence.
And the findings from those nearly 10 million people? Absolutely staggering. The review revealed direct associations between exposure to ultra-processed foods and 32 distinct adverse health parameters. And we aren't just talking about a mild tummy ache here. These parameters span mortality, cancer, and major mental, respiratory, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, and metabolic health outcomes. It's the whole shebang.
Section 4. What the data shows. Unpacking the BMJ umbrella review. When researchers rigorously graded all this data, the results were honestly pretty alarming. Looking at the data spread, every single marker that shifts to the right of the center line represents an increased risk for an adverse health outcome. It's a visual confirmation, proving the overwhelming volume of evidence that links these industrial food formulations to severe health risks across the entire human body.
So, what were the absolute strongest findings? The highest level of proof, which the researchers graded as Class I or convincing evidence, directly links higher ultra-processed food exposure to some of our most severe chronic diseases. We're talking about a significantly higher risk of incident cardiovascular disease-related mortality, type 2 diabetes, and major mental health issues, specifically prevalent anxiety outcomes and combined common mental disorders. Furthermore, the next tier down, Class 2, or highly suggestive evidence, connects these industrial formulations to an even wider array of conditions. This includes incident all-cause mortality. Let that sink in. Early death from any cause. It also highlights heart disease-related mortality and strongly links UPFs to depressive outcomes, adverse sleep-related outcomes, respiratory issues like wheezing, and, as you might expect, obesity.
But here is the really crucial part.
The danger isn't just binary. It's a dose-response relationship. It isn't just a matter of whether you eat them or not. For outcomes like type 2 diabetes and all-cause mortality, every single additional daily serving or every 10% increment of ultra-processed foods in your diet directly increases your risk. The more you consume, the higher your risk climbs. It's that simple.
Section 5. Rethinking our diet. From microbans to macro health. When you step back and compare the FDA's microscopic legal bans to this mountain of modern epidemiological data, it really demands a complete rethinking of our pantries. Based on the sheer volume and consistency of this data, the BMJ researchers reached a very clear conclusion. There is a strong, urgent rationale for public health measures designed to actively target and reduce our dietary exposure to these ultra-processed industrial foods.
Which leaves us with this final, critical thought. We've successfully legislated away toxic salters, dangerous sweeteners, and diseased animal materials. We have regulated our ingredients all the way down to the atomic level. But given the staggering data linking our modern diet to early mortality and chronic disease, when are we finally going to address the systemic processing?